Hi, Mehdi Sultanian, Finance Director here at Exclusive Automotive Group, Aston Martin, Bentley, McLaren of Washington, D.C. And today we're going to discuss open-ended leases and closed-ended leases. I'm going to explain to you the benefits of each, the pros and cons, so you can decide which one would be a better fit for you when you're acquiring your Aston Martin, Bentley, and McLaren. So let's get started. Okay, so in general, to understand what is a closed-ended lease or an open-ended lease, first we must understand what a lease is made out of. So a lease is made of the MSRP, okay, that's set by the manufacturer. You have your selling price, that's basically the price you buy the car at with the dealership. You have your money factor, which is also known as the rent charge, interest charge, basically interest on a lease. Leases do have interest, and they just call it money factor or rent charge, as we spoke about. You have your residual. Residual is the only one that's different from whether if you were to buy a car in cash or if you were to finance it. And I'll explain to you what a residual is. So it's very easy to figure out. Then, depending on the manufacturer, you have your acquisition fee. Some manufacturers have security deposits. Some people have acquisition and security deposits. And on top of that, you have your tags, and title, which any other car also has. So MSRP, pretty understandable. Selling price, we understand it. Rent charge, we understand it. It's the interest. What is a residual? Residual is basically what the manufacturer is willing to pay you after the lease is complete. So whether if you do a 12-month lease or 24-month lease or 36-month lease, they will tell you after that time, this is how much we're willing to pay for the car. And some manufacturers have a set amounts. Some manufacturers actually have like a percentage. So for example, a car could be $100,000 and Bentley Financial Services could say, well, you know what, after 3 years, we think this car is going to be worth about 54%. All you do, you multiply the 54% by the MSRP, and let's just say we said the car's MSRP is 100K. Now you have a $54,000 car at the end of those 3 years. That is a residual. So just like buying a car, a lot of people think financing car is so much easier. You know your buying price, you know the interest rate, you know how many months, 60 months, 75 months, 84 months, and it's easy to figure out. Leases are very easy too. They're nothing complex. You have everything just like financing a car. You have your interest, you have your MSRP, you have your selling price. The only difference is that you have a residual now. And on top of that, you have your tax tag and title, which you're going to have regardless if you were to buy finance or if you pay cash, or whatever the case might be. So now let's discuss closed-ended leases and the benefits of a closed-ended lease. So you can see in what cases a closed-ended leases would benefit you most when you buy an exotic car. A closed-ended lease. So first we're going to start with your traditional closed-ended lease. A closed-ended lease is very hot right now. It's very normal. A lot of manufacturers, whether it's going to be the low-end cars like as the volume vehicles to the exotic cars, people do traditional closed-ended leases. And the only difference from that to an open-ended lease is basically the residual is set. The manufacturer tells you right up front, 50% of the MSRP is the residual, 40% of the MSRP is the residual, and you already know the MSRP is set. So that is the important thing. Mileage is another thing that's with leases. A lot of people think, well, if I'm leasing a car, I'm really renting a car, and I want to drive it as much as I want, and I cannot because it gives me a certain mileage restrictions. You can buy mileage. Manufacturers, from their experience of getting cars back to them after leases, and when people trade in cars, they know how long and how much people drive. So they think people who buy exotic cars only drive their cars for 2,500 miles per year or 5,000 miles per year, because the gentleman that buys an Aston Martin or the missus that buys an Aston Martin or Bentley or McLaren, they have other cars where they daily drive it for their business, and this is just a luxury fun car to have, right? So they kind of think that you're going to do 2,500, but if you want to do a daily driver on a Bentley, you can. You can simply get extra miles. You have options. They give you all of them: Aston Martin, Bentley, and McLaren. You can get 2,500. You can get 5,000 miles. You can get 7,500, 10,000 miles, and 12,000 miles. So regardless, you have choices. And also at the end of the lease, you're not going to be penalized. If you basically go over your miles, they just charge you $1.50 per mile. There's nothing bad about it. If you're going to end up buying the car at the end, it doesn't really make sense to buy up your mileage up front, because the manufacturer is going to end up winning. And the way it usually works out with the captives we're working with, if you buy your mileage up front, it ends up being like 70, 80 cents or 60 cents. If you have the penalty at the end, you're going to end up paying the $1.50. So regardless, you have to see, is this a lease to purchase? Is this something you're leasing now because of the strong options, or and you're not gonna give it back. If you do, you don't need the miles, right? Or so just probably go with the lowest payment per month, which will assist you the best way. So you have your residual, which is set. You have the mileage, which, like we talked about, you have choices with it, whether to pre-purchase or just keep the manufacturer. And you have three scenarios with the lease. This is the most important and awesome thing with leases that a lot of people don't really know, because leasing kind of is like it's a little bit unknown. So we said that the car's MSRP is $100,000, and the manufacturer said the car is going to be worth about 50% at the end of the lease, right? So that means in 3 years they're thinking this car is going to be worth $50,000. So your scenario number one is you come back after 3 years, you say, you know what, I enjoyed the car, and for some reason the car is now extremely hot, and that same car with the same mileage that you have on it is now worth about $65,000. So now you have a $15,000 equity in that car, which is fantastic. The manufacturer gives you the privilege of buying that car and taking advantage of that equity. You can take that lease, put it into a finance car. You can take it, put it toward another lease. You can buy out the car. That is a privilege you get when you lease a car. Let's just say in the second scenario where you come in and they said it was going to be worth $50,000, and it's in fact worth $50,000. So you can give the car back to them, to the manufacturer, or you kind of think to yourself, you know what, I've had this car from the very beginning. I've really taken good care of it. I've done all the maintenance to it. I've parked it far away. The car is in good shape, and you may consider buying it just because of the fact that you've taken care of it. The third scenario is we bring in, they say it's going to be worth $50,000 because we said MSRP is 100K, residuals 50%, so that's 50K, but now the car is worth $40,000 for whatever reason. In that scenario, you have a negative equity, and the manufacturer gives you the privilege to walk away. So it's going to end up being a win-win-win for the consumer. And if there's a loss involved, when it's the third scenario where the car is actually worth less than what they said it was going to be, in that case you would want to walk away. You just go to another lease, another finance, and we buy another car cash. So those are the benefits of a closed-ended lease. Is basically, depending on how it's structured, you will take care of it. So it's very important to have a high residual and low buying price, because then the gap that you have is only the amount you're going to be paying for. And just like financing a car, a lot of people say, oh, well, if I lease a car, it's not really my car. Just same thing with financing. When you finance a car, really the lender, whoever is using the bank, is going to be owning the car. So regardless, the flexibility with the leases is outstanding, just like it is with cash or paying financing. So it's amazing time to be leasing cars because of the nice flexibility it has. So now let's go over and talk about an open-ended leases and what benefits you get with an open-ended lease. Now that you have a good understanding of what a lease is, what a closed-ended lease is, let's go over on what is an open-ended lease. So the open-ended leases have their own benefits. A benefit that's very popular with an open-ended lease is that you don't have any mileage restriction. It's kind of like financing a car, but it's called a lease, where you can drive the car in a relaxed position. But you have to keep in mind that there's still going to be depreciation involved, so you don't want to be driving too much with it. But regardless, if you're going to end up kind of buying out the car, the open-ended lease works for you. The second thing is, and a lot of our investors, a lot of our consumers who have business take advantage of, is that in an open-ended leases with the two companies that we actually use in America that do exotic cars, they don't report that you have a leased car on your credit bureau. So a lot of our consumers find that attractive, right? So they say, you know what, I'm always in acquisition mode. I'm buying buildings, I'm buying businesses, and I don't necessarily want people to know that, I have an exotic Bentley or Aston Martin. Maybe it may look bad on my business partners or whatever the case might be. So two major benefits right here that you have with an open-ended leases: no mileage restriction, and it doesn't also report to the manufacturer on a credit bureau. The second thing is, when you do an open-ended leases, it's really set forth for people who want to do a lease to buy, and you have like payment constraints. So someone says, you know what, I can afford this 1,800 payments a month, however I cannot afford like 2,200. And with an open-ended leases, you can start really customizing the lease. You can work the residual at the end, you can work the down payment, you can work the how much you want to put down, how much you want to include in the financing, stuff like that. So it's really bespoke, it's really catered in, so you can actually do a 60 months lease, even though you really want to keep the car for 36 months lease. It allows you to have that nice and low payments, but gives you the flexibility of it. So it's very customable lease. It's not set forth by the manufacturer. The banks that actually do an open-ended lease, they end up owning the car throughout the whole term of the lease. So you have that as well. There is no set residual. So this is an important thing that you have nicely with the close-ended leases. On an open-ended leases, they have an amortization table where they tell you upfront, you sign it, you kind of say, hey, this is how much the car is going to be worth after certain time. And it's very nice, it's very transparent from the very beginning. They'll tell you this is the first month, this is the second month, and all the way down to 36 months or 60 months. So you already know what the amortization table is going to be, but there's not that very straightforward, okay, 50% $100,000 is $50,000 residual, or cases like that. In the table we talk about it. Traditionally, it's really to help people who have payment constraints, people who don't want to deal with the mileage situation, or clientele who wants to do a lease to buy. And lastly, the most important thing with this is that sometimes the manufacturers don't have a very strong lease program, right? The money factor, for example, is really high, it's 6-7% interest, and the residual is kind of weak. They say, oh, you know what? We really think after the 3 years, this car is only really going to be worth about 40%. So now it's a $100,000 car. They're saying it's going to be worth $40,000. With an open-ended leases, that company may see something different in the economy. They say, you know what, we actually think this car is going to be worth 63%, right? They say, you know what, the economy is nice, we're going to only charge you 3% or 2% interest. So when you have a case where the manufacturer of the car, the Aston Martin, Bentley, or McLaren, is not being strong with their leases, you take advantage of an open-ended leases because it's customable, like we talked about. They may see something different than the manufacturer's not seeing, so they may give you a nicer, stronger residual. Their interest rate or money factor or rent charge could be lower. In those cases also, we switch clients from closed-ended leases to an open-ended leases. So you have those flexibilities. Now let's go and recap all the things we talked about in a nicer format so you can actually get a grasp of the cons and benefits of a closed-ended lease and the cons and benefits of the open-ended lease. That way you have it all at once and you can bring it all together. All right, so when we talked about what a lease is, we talked about a closed-ended lease, we talked about an open-ended lease, and we went over all the benefits and some of the cons that may be residing in both. So let's recap together what both of them are. So with a closed-ended lease, we have a set residual. That is awesome. I personally like that. I think that's kind of cool and gives the consumer a nice transparency up front. You have to look out for your mileage, but they give you options. You can buy the mileage up front. You can, instead of 2,500 miles per year, you can buy 5,000, 7,500, 10,000 miles, 12,000 miles. If you buy it up front, you end up paying 60, 70, 80 cents up front. If you don't, at the end, you pay $1.50, $1, depending on the manufacturer, if it's Aston Martin, Bentley, or McLaren. With the open-ended leases, you don't have mileage restriction, which is cool. It's more of like a lease to finance and a lease to buy. So that's kind of the clientele that would take advantage of that. They don't report to the bureau like we talked about, so that's something important for you. That is a nice advantage as well. And in both scenarios, it doesn't really benefit the dealership for us to persuade you to a specific lease, whether it's a closed-ended leases or open-ended leases. We love to serve you well. In some cases, your salesperson will probably tell you right now, the manufacturer has an amazing lease, so it probably makes sense to do a lease with them. Sometimes they tell you, you know what, the manufacturer is not supporting right now, so it may be a better time to be using open-ended leases. Open-ended leases in general, one thing I also didn't mention, originally was made for manufacturers and farmers who were buying really expensive equipments, $200,000, $300,000 machineries, and an open-ended leases was created for those platforms. But given our cars are also like the same kind of price ranges, an open-ended leases works as well. So closed-ended lease, set residual, set mileage. Open-ended leases, no mileage restrictions, no residual, but you do have an amortization table. And in open-ended leases, it's a little bit more custom make, it's more bespoke for your needs. If somebody wants to have less down payment of some sort, they want to have a crazy, very low payment, they can do a 60 months term lease, even though they want to have the car for 36 months. So those are the benefits. At any given time, we can show you both closed-ended leases or open-ended leases and see which one would make you more satisfied. On our website, if you go to exclusiveautomotivegroup.com, all of our cars have leases. I've put leases for each single one. They're all your traditional closed-ended leases where basically it's set forth. For example, let's just go to this specific car. You go to the lease info tab. It tells you how much it is. I'm going to bring it up for you. It tells you your cap cost reduction, the mileage at the end, and you have that. So anytime you want to go to any of our cars, you can just go to new inventory. In particular, Bentley or Aston Martin, just hover over the specific car and I'll tell you what it is. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions regarding any of our leases, anything we discussed in this video, feel free to contact me. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. My email is mehdi@eag-dc.com. Our phone number at the store is 703-712-83424. My specific mobile number is 616-666-6799. I'll put all that in the description as well, so you have it. Like the video, share the video, comment, and I'll be reading all of your comments. Thank you so much. Take care.